Good morning, everybody. Yesterday in New South Wales, we had just over 107,000 people get vaccinated, which is a great outcome. However, we are seeing that rate slightly decline, and we really need to call upon anybody who hasn't had any doses to come forward and get their first dose, but also to make sure that you come forward for your second dose as soon as you can as well. That's really, really important for us to keep the pace that we've managed to have in the last few weeks. I also wanted to highlight that whilst we have more than 42.5% of our population fully vaccinated, we have some time to get to that magic 70% double vaccination when we can look forward to life being much freer than what it is today. To 8 p.m. last night, we had 1,405 cases of community transmission in New South Wales, and tragically 6 people lost their lives, and we extend our deepest condolences to their loved ones who are experiencing obvious grief at this time. I want to stress that whilst today the New South Wales Government is outlining our plan, our roadmap for the way forward in New South Wales, that we're definitely not out of the woods. We know that case numbers are likely to peak in the next week or so, and we also know that our hospital system will be under the greatest stress in October. However, we also know that living with COVID means you have a cautious and staged reopening once you get to those high rates of vaccination in your adult population. Now, we have obviously consulted the national plan. We've also had input from our health experts and stakeholders to make sure that when we start reopening at 70% double dose, that it's done in a safe way and it's only for people who are vaccinated. So you have been warned. If you're not vaccinated, come forward and get the vaccine. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the many freedoms that people have at 70% vaccination. I also want to stress that at this stage, the roadmap says that any person who is 70% double dose vaccinated is able to participate in the freedoms that come forward from that time. However, at any stage, and this is consistent with the Doherty report, at any stage, if there's a concentration of disease in a town or a suburb or a local government area or an outbreak that wasn't anticipated, health can restrict movement and give advice to make sure we don't have a surge, which is going to put too much pressure on our hospital system. Because even when you have 70% double dose vaccination, there is still a proportion of the community that aren't vaccinated. That's why we're really pushing hard to have as many people as possible come forward for their first dose. Because when you have a high rate of people who've had their first dose, it gives you that extra layer of protection. So we're hopeful. Dr. Chen and I often say we'd love to see the number at 85% or higher for first doses when we get to that 70% double dose figure. And of course, before that time, there'll also be vaccine available for 12 to 15-year-olds, which currently isn't available widely. So there is a number of positive things regarding vaccination that will happen between now and that 70% time. But also to say that an example of how health might give their advice, if at the time we open there are high case numbers in a concentrated area, it may well be that vaccinated people will be able to undertake everything on the list, but within their own local community, rather than having the freedom to travel everywhere. So everybody at 70% double dose will have freedoms, but at any point, if there's an outbreak or a surge or an unexpected thing that arises, health at any time will give government advice to say people in a particular area, a particular town, may need to restrict their movements if they're vaccinated within their area, within their local government area, as opposed to going all over the state. And of course, the closer we get to that time, the closer we'll be able to provide advice based on what health gives us as well. I also want to stress that obviously at 80% double dose, there'll be further freedoms, including the prospect of international travel, including other things we can do. So what you see before you, the roadmap, is at 70% double dose, and at 80% there'll be more. I also want to stress that there isn't a specific date. We will get to 70% double dose when people get their second dose, when people come forward to get vaccinated, and these freedoms will come into place the Monday after that occurs. So we don't want to put a specific date on that. It's really up to how quickly people get vaccinated and how many people come forward for that vaccine. But the freedoms will trigger on the Monday after that 70%. Now, in relation to schools, we always had to choose a fixed date. because unlike other venues and unlike adult activity, it's really important for school communities, for students and teachers to have a fixed date they open to provide absolute certainty, and that's why we nominated the 25th of October. We assumed, and I think that assumption will bear fruit, that by that stage 70% of adults would be vaccinated and there'd be some start of vaccination for 12 to 15-year-olds. And I just wanted to make that point. That's why that 25th of October date is fixed, because we need to provide that certainty and that planning for school communities across the state. But obviously for adults, we have the capacity to be more flexible and make sure that that date of starting the reopening isn't triggered until there's 70% double dose vaccination. But I do want to stress that this roadmap is conditional upon the things that I talked about. If there's high rates of disease in a particular locality or a sudden surge or an outbreak, the Doherty report says you have to restrict movement in those communities. It doesn't mean you can't still go and do the things you want to do, but your mobility will be restricted within a particular distance. And that could happen at any stage, because towns or cities outside of Greater Sydney even who haven't had any outbreaks and experience an outbreak may have to come under that condition, and I just want to make that very clear. Also today the New South Wales Government is announcing that parts of regional New South Wales will be coming out of lockdown, and the Deputy Premier will go into further detail to outline what that means and which parts of the community will be out of lockdown. But obviously those parts of the New South Wales that come out of lockdown on Saturday will still have restrictions placed on them to make sure we limit the spread of disease in our regional communities. And then after Dr Chant's update and Deputy Premier's update on the regions, the Treasurer will make some comments on what this means for New South Wales in terms of our citizens and our businesses, and then we'll take your questions. Thank you.